My name is Valeria and I am a teaching artist at the Armory Center for the Arts. Today during this video, I'm going to be talking to you about the exhibition we have at the Armory currently, as well as a project that you're going to be able to do at home. The exhibition we're going to be focusing on is called Borderlands Within, La Frontera Adentro, and it's an exhibition by artist Tanya Aguiñiga. Tanya's work is based on her identity, which is both Mexican and American. A big part of her identity was having to travel back and forth between Mexico, where she lived, and America, where she went to school every day. The artwork that we're going to be focusing on today is called America's Wall, El Muro de América. Within this work, she focuses on the fence that she saw every day while going from her home to school every day. She uses the fence or the wall as a material, creating a rubbing with that wall that ends up being a big cloth where the rust is part of the material as well. As you're thinking about this artwork, I want you to be thinking about these questions. What do you see? What colors can you identify? What type of materials are being used? How many types of art making are we looking at within this work? How did the artist make the mark on the cloth? Why would the artist do that? How do you think it feels to do the artwork as a group? How are the linen or cloth and video related? What do you think they were thinking while trying to make this rubbing? If you were going to make an imprint or rubbing of something important in your life, what would you make it out of? Within this work by Tanya, she uses the technique of rubbing, which we'll also be using in the project that we're going to be doing today. The project that we're going to be doing today is rubbing and tracing home drawings. What you'll need for this is a box of crayons, or any crayons that you have laying around, colored pencils, printer paper, probably get a few sheets as you might want to do a few of these drawings. And you're also going to need everyday home objects. I would like you to focus on objects that you use every day. So for me, I chose a spatula, sunglasses, phone case, fork, caps of various items that I use, Tupperware, measuring cups, and also I decided to go with a food object, which is a little piece of pasta that has ridges on it, as well as a quarter. Once you have all these items and are ready to go, I will be showing you exactly how to do it. Once you've collected all your items, you're ready to begin tracing. We're first going to start tracing and then move on to rubbing and then combine the two to create a new drawing at the end. When tracing, think about where would you like the object to be placed. I've already traced out this measuring of spoon, making sure I've also traced in within the object's openings. Now that I've traced this, I'm going to move on to the spatula and think about whether I want it to overlap or want it to be in a separate side of the piece of paper. I'm going to have it overlap right here. While you're tracing, also think about the color choice that you'd like to make. All these items will make different shapes that might remind you of something where you might want to create a drawing with all these different shapes. Maybe a monster or an animal of some sort. Once you've already started tracing, oftentimes some people like to shade in. However, you can do whatever you'd like. What's most important is that you experiment. So right here I can shade just in some areas and not others, or I can keep them all as a line drawing. When you're all done, you should have the paper somewhat full, and this is a drawing that I made with all the items I had collected before. Once you're done with the tracing, we're going to move on to rubbing to create a new drawing to see how this technique also works. To get started, you're going to need another object, so pick whatever other object you like or the same object. I'm going to use this object right here, and you're going to need crayons this time. For the crayons, you have to take the paper side off to be able to use the long side of the crayon. It doesn't matter if they're broken or not, as long as you're able to use the long side. So for making rubbings, it's important that the object is below the piece of paper and you rub back and forth. As you can see, the texture on top comes out once you put some pressure onto the crayon with a piece of paper. When creating rubbings, it's also fun to be able to mix colors, to create new colors. So we're going to be using yellow. Let's use a different one. Let's use a spatula, yellow, and mixing it with blue to create green. Now, you could also use text for a lot of these objects. If you find something that has text on top, that is usually very easy to get a rubbing out of. So you pick some, maybe a smaller crayon, and rub really hard. and then you'll see some of the text coming through there. Now when making your rubbings, think about the orientation, think about what type of patterns you might want to create, the composition. When I was making my rubbings, I like to also just create one item per drawing to see sort of what it looks like and also experiment as much as possible. So this is my experimental page where I rubbed everything I had to be able to see what sort of rubbing it gave me, the pattern that it gave me. I would try them on both sides, which is really important to experiment on both sides to see which one gives you the better rubbing. And once I knew sort of what was happening, I was able to compose rubbings like so. With this rubbing, I use brush to be able to create that pattern in the back. So it's also important to experiment with your objects. Don't always choose objects that you think are going to work, but choose objects that you don't know what it's going to look like this brush. I had no idea what it was going to look like, but it has this really interesting dot pattern. Once you've experimented with both tracing and rubbing and all the objects that you have, feel free to grab more objects and keep experimenting, or maybe you'd like to combine them both and create a new drawing. So this is a drawing that I made combining both techniques. I used the popsicle sticks to be able to trace, and then I used the quarter and the fork as rubbing materials. So with this way, you're going to be able to create both line and shading within one drawing itself. And if you want to take it one step further and you have a pair of scissors at home, I would suggest maybe doing other rubbings or other tracings, and then you're going to be able to cut them out, either the full outline or not. You know, experiment and see what you like best. And once you cut them out, you're going to be able to use them as collage. You're going to be able to use it to give your drawings more dimension and making it seem like something is on top of the other as it is. So you can put it on top of each other, glue it on if you have a glue stick, or you can keep them as drawings just like that. Have fun at home experimenting, and I can't wait to see what you guys come up with.